Commodities, are they the revenge of the old economy? Torsten, welcome back. And Commodities, the revenge of the old economy. What a great title for the interview. Commodities versus equities. We see it very nicely on the charts you brought us. If we look at the MSCI World's up and away in the blue sky region, I would call it already, but commodities still undervalued.
Undervalued, but for the first time also picking up in value a little bit. When you look at the absolute performance in commodity markets, it's basically the clash of the titans. When you look at both of the asset classes on that, commodities still cheap, and equities priced because of a tech rally through the roof on some of the measures. Look at Tesla, look at Apple, look at Amazon, the FANG stock. When you compare, for example, with the mining sector on that side, but also with prices of real things. So therefore, the relative value in commodities, if you look at that, is still at an all-time low, despite commodities rallied by 15%.
And that's also what your chart on the right side really shows, because I think you developed it by yourself. And that's really interesting because it's like still we are on a 50, 60-year low in commodities.
When you look at the 70s from that period, it is an absolute low in relative terms. So that means either equities are very expensive, this is something we also subscribe for, and in combination commodities are quite cheap. And investors for the long run like cheap things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, then let's have a look on oil, because oil was all of a sudden very cheap, but it climbed up again to, I think we are now at $53, $55 a barrel of Brent oil, which is quite nice for the oil companies. So what's your take on oil?
Yeah, first one, oil companies starting from $50 are earning positive money again. Still the valuation is still in the trunk, basically. Still very low from a fundamental point of view. We've seen the first time since oil is physically trading on the exchange that you also can have a negative price for a major commodity if it's in abundance, if you have a lockdown, if the planes are on the ground. We've seen that last year. And now we recovered to a level that is still inexpensive despite supply-demand fundamentals, and still has a good cushion for the investing side. So therefore, oil in the moment is reasonable priced, but it's not the most sexy trade in the sector.
Okay, super. So probably a good idea to look at the big dividend players.
Exactly. The oil price gives you the cushion in the moment that oil companies are making money. And here you have dividend plays from 5 to 8% on that. Oil itself, $50, fair priced. We were looking at like 45 to 60 range for the next 1 or 2 years. And everything below is not sustainable for the industry. So therefore, we don't think we are going as deep.
Okay, super. Then let's move from oil, the real super old economy, I would call it, to the new technical economy, electric cars.
Yeah, let's call it green tech, right?
Exactly, green tech, like Joe Biden wants to do this sustainable and green. But exactly for that, we need a lot of different metals. And it looks like the mines are not there.
And this is the revenge of our old economy here. We talk about all the sexy tech things we need to play with, electronic driving, we talk about high tech, we talk about regenerative energy, and we look at the stuff we need for that. You see like the excess demand in certain commodities, so the winning trade for the probably next years is still on the metal side. Base metals like copper, like nickel, but special metals like lithium and cobalt, which you look for the battery market. But also then in the regenerative energy, it's a huge field of growth for the commodity industry that you haven't seen since the 2000s.
Yeah, especially for the renewables, I think this is also something really interesting. On the one hand, silver, you named it here on the chart, and the rare earth metals. This is something, but if we combine renewables with the electric cars, it's very interesting because there is already a projection for silver, for example. Silver was heavily in the media the last weeks of the silver short squeeze and all that kind of things. But if we come back to supply demand, there is really a supply gap in silver.
It is, yeah. Looking at the demand side, looking at supplies for example, for photovoltaic industry, for other high-tech stuff, you need the silver market from that. I mean, all the photography is gone from the market basically, but you have other important factors. And when you look at the fundamental supply-demand analysis, you look at historic prices of silver, inflation adjusted, we're talking $100, $120 for silver as a high price, and we are just touched 30 in despite this Reddit scam what you have on Wall Street. It was like the first, basically the first move. We see silver in the longer term massively higher, like above $50 again, maybe 50 to 60. So this means more than doubling from the current price level because of exactly this price gap that you see here.
Yeah, and also I think with the green economy and the sustainable economy, for 1 gigawatt of solar power, we need 3 million ounces of silver. Yeah, and I think in the building today is worldwide approximately 400-500 gigawatts of solar power. With electric cars, there is a prognosis of the Silver Institute that we have like 130 million ounces for the electric car industry by 2030 every year.
And don't forget the silver mines. There are barely a handful of pure silver mines that are developed in the market. So therefore, here's a potential for crunch time within the commodity sector. It's a small and volatile metal, but a very sexy metal indeed for that. Within all the base metal complex on the other side, profiting from the medium to long-term trend of EV, of regenerative energy.
Exactly, and that's where we already had the outlook for the commodity. So the future looks bright, right?
From that, yeah, it shines like a silver lightning on that for the whole sector. I mean, the gold prices for that is a very interesting factor. The precious metals also for 2021 is one of our favorite sectors in regard of our outlook. But the overall sector looks quite sexy. The cycle just started a couple of years ago, and it's like normally a multi-year cycle, 10, 12 years at least. We're looking at the shift from energy to industrial metals. I said like oil, for example, is fair priced, but the flow basically we see from the energy sector to the industrial metals because of all the EV and the regenerative energy. And then there's another macroeconomic topic coming up. This is called inflation because of all the money printing what you see here. And precious metals is the one hedge that you see normally here. The other one is agriculture. Look back in the 70s, agriculture prices spiked. We've seen this like 15-20% now, but we're talking about 50 to 100% spike in agriculture prices because of a coming inflation in the sector. So you have a nice hedge if you have consumer price inflation, and you have a sector that is fundamentally still cheap, inexpensive in regard to its long-term trend. That's what makes commodities sexy again.
Absolutely. I think there's nothing to add. Commodities is the place to be, right?
It's what shines nicer than an ounce of silver, right?
Exactly, maybe an ounce of gold. Super, Torsten, thank you very much. It was a great outlook, and yeah, we are bullish for the commodities, and let's see how that goes.
Pleasure. Let's see later in 2021.
Definitely, that's how we do it. Thank you very much. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Professor Dr. Torsten Dennin, the CIO of Asset Management Switzerland from Zurich. And you heard it, commodities are hot, commodities are on, and definitely precious metals, but also all the metals, base metals you need for green and renewable energy, for green economy. So it looks like that we have a wonderful decade of economy on the one hand, but for commodities in front of us. And I would suggest you really have a very close look on that. My name is Jochen Steiger, Commodity TV, in partnership with Dukascopy TV. Thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Geneva.